My daughter said her husband deserved my room more than me, so I handed her the eviction notice. It started on a rainy Thursday night, drops pattering on the window like impatient fingers. I was halfway through an old Western rerun, the TV glowing in my quiet living room, when Emily and her husband, Trevor, knocked on my door. They said they needed to talk, faces serious as storm clouds. Emily didn't hesitate. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dad, Trevor and I need the master bedroom. He deserves it more than you do." My hands trembled around the remote, coffee mug slipping from my grip. Pain hit like a wrench to the gut. After 45 years fixing cars to buy this house with Martha, now this? I was Matthew Collins, 72, retired mechanic from Ohio, and my only daughter was kicking me out of my own room. I asked her to repeat what she had just said, voice shaking like an old engine. Just before you continue to watch, Joe would like you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage him to keep his streak of thrilling revenge stories for you to watch. Alright, back to the story. Emily spoke slower this time, as if I were hard of hearing or slow in the head. She claimed Trevor worked harder at his sales job and needed space for his online business, like my 45 years under greasy hoods meant nothing. I reminded her that I bought the house with my bare hands and calloused palms, scraping every penny while raising her after Martha passed. She shrugged like it was old news, no big deal. Trevor just smirked from the couch, arms crossed smug. Pain twisted deep, my own flesh and blood, treating my life's work like trash to toss. That smirk lit a fire in my chest I hadn't felt in years, burning hot and steady. Suspense built. What else were they planning? I sat quiet, letting them think they'd won. I asked Emily if she remembered who changed her diapers when she cried at night, who sat through every spelling bee cheering her on, who sold his best tools to pay her college tuition so she could have a better life. Pain hit me hard. Those memories flashing like old movies, me working double shifts under greasy cars to make it happen. Her reply came cold as ice. "That was your job as a parent, Dad. You don't get a medal for doing the basics." Trevor chuckled under his breath, like it was a joke. My blood ran cold, freezing in my veins like the rain outside turning to sleet. Agitating the betrayal deeper, I sat there stunned, my own daughter dismissing my life's sacrifices like yesterday's oil rag. Suspense built in my chest. What else would they say if I stayed quiet? I decided not to argue anymore, but to listen carefully to what else they'd reveal, my ears sharp as a mechanic's wrench turning a bolt. The truth tumbled out fast after that, like a dam breaking loose. They weren't just asking for my room. They wanted me to relocate to the basement, which still smelled of mold and oil stains from my old workshop days. Emily insisted it was fair since I was just retired and didn't need space. I sat in silence, gripping my knees tight, while their words landed like hammers on an anvil, each one ringing louder in my ears. Pain agitated deep, my house, built with Martha's dreams and my sweat. Now there's storage for the old man. Trevor slipped up then, mentioning something about papers being ready for the deed. Emily shot him a glare quick, realizing he'd said too much. Suspense coiled in my gut. Were they plotting to steal it all? I forced myself to stay calm, nodding like I hadn't caught it. I sat down with them as if nothing had happened, my shoulders still throbbing like a bad heartbeat from the shelf hit. Kyle popped popcorn into his mouth, grinning at me like the shove was a funny secret. My son Victor asked if I wanted another drink, his voice casual, as if he hadn't just ignored my bangs on the door like distant thunder. Elaine tried to laugh it off, saying, "Boys will be boys," but her eyes darted away guilty. The room felt smaller than the closet had, walls pressing in with their fake cheer. Pain agitated deep, my own kids acting like the lock-in was nothing, like my fear and humiliation didn't count in their cozy world. I smiled back, an empty, practiced smile that made them relax, shoulders loosening as they chuckled again. They thought I was weak, the old grandpa who'd swallow it quiet and shuffle off. But weakness was the mask I needed them to believe, hiding the storm building inside like clouds gathering dark. Suspense coiled in my chest. How long till they saw the real me? That night, Elaine drove me back to my small brick house on Maple Street, the car headlights cutting through the dark like weak lanterns in fog. She filled the silence with small talk about the weather. "Looks like rain tomorrow," carefully avoiding the subject of the closet like it was a bad dream we'd all wake from. Her hands gripped the wheel tight, knuckles white as bone. When she dropped me off at the curb, she didn't even wait for me to reach the porch before pulling away, taillights fading red into the night like dying embers. My house had never felt so cold, the key turning stiff in the lock, empty rooms echoing my footsteps like whispers of betrayal. Pain agitated deep, locked out by blood, ignored like an old book no one opens anymore. Loneliness pressed heavy as a wet blanket, but I realized, sitting in the dim kitchen light, it can become fuel, burning hot to forge something stronger. Suspense built in my chest. What if I turned their silence against them? I wasn't abandoned. I was sharpening, like a blade in the forge waiting for the hammer. I went home acting like nothing had changed, pain from Emily's words agitating deep like a splinter under skin I couldn't pull. Over dinner that night, she brought up the bedroom again, her tone more demanding, fork waving like a weapon. "Dad, we need you to move downstairs soon. It's only fair." Trevor joined in quick, leaning back smug. "Dad, be reasonable. You're old. You don't need all that space upstairs. Leave it for folks who work hard." His smirk twisted the knife, agitating the betrayal hotter. Me, who'd fixed his cars free, now old, like expired milk. I agreed softly, voice low, just to watch their smug faces light up like they'd won a prize. "Okay, kids," I said, forcing a smile that hid the storm inside. Inside, though, I was memorizing every insult, every glance, like tally marks on a prison wall. Suspense built in my chest. Would they push more? That night, I moved one small box to the basement on purpose, letting them think I'd caved. The moment they saw the box downstairs the next morning, Trevor slapped me on the back hard, his hand landing like a mock pat that stung. "See? You're already settling in down here. Good man." Emily looked proud of herself, beaming like she'd solved a puzzle, her eyes gleaming victory. Pain agitated deep. My own daughter, treating me like a problem to shuffle away, after I'd given her the roof over her head. I forced a smile, though ball burned in my throat like bad acid, rising hot. Their glee told me everything. They really thought they'd won, me tucked away like old tools in a shed. Agitating the hurt deeper, I nodded meek, but inside, revenge brewed like coffee left too long on heat. Suspense coiled in my gut. How far would their smug go? What they didn't know was that my lawyer had already drafted the eviction notice, papers waiting crisp in my drawer like a loaded gun. At breakfast the next day, sun slanting through the kitchen window like prying eyes, Trevor said loud enough for the neighbors to hear if they listened close. "Emily, once we remodel the master, we'll have more room for guests. Maybe even rent out the house someday." I nearly dropped my coffee mug, hot liquid sloshing over the rim like my boiling blood. Guests? Rent? This house I'd built with sweat and blisters. Now they're cash cow? My own daughter nodded in agreement, sipping her tea casual, as if discussing weather. Their greed was endless, like a hole you pour money into but never fills. Pain hit hard. After Martha's death, I'd given Emily everything, even this roof, thinking family meant sharing. Now they plotted to flip it for profit, me shoved to the basement like old junk. Agitating the betrayal deeper, I sat quiet, fork trembling. Suspense built in my chest. How much more would their plans go? That was the moment I swore they'd regret underestimating me, treating me like a worn-out tool to discard. I started recording their conversations on my old flip phone, hiding it under the couch cushion or in my pocket like a secret spy gadget. Pain from Emily's demands agitated sharp, her choosing Trevor over me, like I was a burden to shuffle away. The things they said when they thought I was asleep were shocking, voices drifting through thin walls like ghosts. Trevor mocked me, calling me the fossil who'd soon be dust. Emily laughed about how easy it'll be when Dad finally croaks, her giggles cutting deep as knives. I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached like it'd crack, lying still in the dark. Agitating the hurt deeper, I saved every clip, dates stamped like evidence tags. Suspense coiled in my gut. What worse would they say next? Those recordings would be the nails in their coffin, hammering home their greed when the time came right. I visited Paul again the next day, my old flip phone heavy in my pocket with the recordings burning like hot coals. Pain from Emily's demands agitated deep, her choosing Trevor over me, like my years of sacrifice were just dust under her feet. Paul leaned back in his chair after I played the clips, his eyebrows shooting up like surprised caterpillars. "Matthew, this isn't just greed," he said slow. "It's elder abuse, pressuring you out of your own room, mocking your age like that." The words hit hard as a wrench to the gut, agitating the betrayal deeper. My own daughter treating me like a problem to solve. But he was right. It stung but lit a fire. Paul grinned slight, eyes twinkling. "This eviction notice will hit them like a truck. Legal, airtight, 30 days max." I could almost taste the justice, sweet after bitter hurt. Suspense built in my chest. Would they suspect? But timing was everything. I had to wait for the perfect moment, like a mechanic tightening a bolt just right. Emily decided to host a family dinner in my house that weekend, inviting relatives I hadn't seen in years, cousins from out of town, aunts who'd sent Christmas cards but little else. Pain agitated sharp, her showing off her home like she'd earned it, after I'd handed it over thinking it was love. She wanted to flaunt the remodeled kitchen and big yard, proving her perfect life to everyone. I said nothing when she announced it over breakfast, secretly thrilled like a kid with a hidden candy. This was the stage I'd been waiting for, her gathering an audience for her own downfall. I polished my shoes till they shone, ironed my best shirt crisp as new paper, and slid the eviction papers into my jacket pocket, folded neat but heavy as lead. Suspense coiled in my gut. Would they spot my calm too calm? The trap was set. The audience was gathering, relatives arriving with hugs and chatter, unaware of the bomb ticking under the table. During the dinner, Emily proudly dragged cousins upstairs like a tour guide showing off a museum. "This will be our room," she announced, arms wide as if unveiling a prize. Trevor boasted about the renovations they'd make. New paint, bigger closet, fancy lights, like they owned the place lock, stock, and barrel. Pain hit hard. This was my master bedroom, where Martha and I had shared 40 years of whispers and dreams. Now they're grabbed like kids claiming a toy. I watched silently from the hallway, my lips curled in a tight smile that hid the storm inside. No one even noticed me standing there, like I was invisible in my own house. Agitating the betrayal deeper, I clenched my fists. After giving them this roof, they paraded it like a trophy. Suspense built in my chest. Would they spot my quiet rage? But they were about to notice me in the loudest way possible when I flipped their show upside down. Back downstairs, Trevor raised a glass high, wine sloshing like his overblown pride. "Here's to new beginnings in this wonderful home." Everyone clapped, cousins cheering like it was a wedding toast. My own daughter didn't even glance at me, too busy beaming at the praise. Pain agitated sharp. Me, who'd hammered every nail in these walls, now a ghost in my own living room, invisible as air. Their cheers echoed mockingly, agitating the humiliation like salt in a raw cut. I felt like a ghost haunting my past, watching them claim what I'd built with sweat and love. Suspense coiled tight. Would my next move shatter the party? I stood up slowly, clearing my throat loud as the room fell silent, eyes turning curious. I tapped my glass with a spoon, the ting echoing sharp in the crowded room like a warning bell before a storm. Pain from Emily's demands agitated deep. Her words, "He deserves it more," twisting like a rusty screw in my gut. Guests turned, forks pausing mid-bite. "Thank you for coming tonight," I said calmly, voice steady as the hands that once fixed engines. "But I think it's time I tell you what's really happening here." Emily's smile faltered quick, like ice cracking under weight. Trevor shifted in his seat, face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. I unfolded the eviction notice slow, the paper crisp and loud in the silence, unfolding like a secret map to their downfall. Cousins leaned in curious, aunts whispering. I held it high for all to see, the words bold black on white. 30 days to vacate. Gasps filled the room as I let it hang, suspense building thick. Would they deny or explode? I laid the papers flat on the table with a slap that cut the gasp short, like a judge's gavel dropping final. Pain agitated sharp. Years building this home with Martha, now my daughter claiming it like stolen goods. Emily Collins. Trevor Miller. "You are hereby given 30 days to vacate my property," I said. My voice didn't shake once, strong as the beams I'd nailed myself. Trevor's jaw dropped like a broken hinge, and Emily turned pale as milk, her hand trembling on her wine glass. The cousins whispered in shock, aunts covering mouths like they'd heard a curse. Trevor stammered, "You can't." but trailed off weak. Emily's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, red liquid spreading like blood from a wound. Suspense hung heavy. Would she beg or lash out? The room waited, breath held. Emily stammered like a broken record. "Dad, you can't do this." Her voice cracked high, face twisting in shock as the eviction notice sat on the table like a bomb ticking down. Trevor barked loud. "You're bluffing. This is fake garbage." He leaned forward, eyes wild as a trapped rat, but I calmly pointed to Paul's signature and the legal seal at the bottom, stamped clear and final. "Not a bluff," I said steady, my voice cutting through their panic like a hot knife through butter. Pain agitated deep. My own daughter, who demanded my room like I was worthless, now facing her own boot out the door. Their faces twisted with panic, Emily's cheeks red as boiled beets, Trevor sweating bullets. Guests whispered, eyes darting like startled birds in a cage. Suspense built thick. Would they beg or explode? Trevor lunged across the table, trying to grab the papers, his hands swiping desperate like a thief in the night. My cousin Samuel, a sheriff with arms thick as tree trunks, stood up fast and shoved Trevor back hard. "Touch him again, and you'll answer to me," he growled low, voice rumbling like thunder in a quiet room. Trevor stumbled into his chair, face pale as milk, the room erupting in murmurs like bees in a hive. Emily's carefully built image of being the perfect daughter crumbled before everyone's eyes, her makeup streaked with sudden tears, guests staring like she'd grown horns. Pain agitated sharp, her treating me like a burden in my own home, now exposed like dirty laundry in the wind. I simply sat back down, folding my arms, enjoying the collapse as whispers spread. How could she? Poor Matthew. Suspense coiled tight. Would she deny or break? That's when I revealed the recordings, pulling out my phone with a steady hand, thumb hovering over play. I hit play on my phone with a steady hand, the room already tense like a string pulled tight. Trevor's voice filled the space. "Once the old man croaks, we'll finally cash in on this dump." Emily's laughter followed, sharp and cold as a knife edge. Every eye in the room turned toward them in disgust, cousins whispering furious, aunts covering mouths like they'd tasted poison. Pain agitated deep, my own daughter mocking my death like a bad joke, after I'd given her everything, even this roof she'd claim as hers. Emily covered her face with shaking hands, sobbing loud now, makeup running like black rivers. Trevor cursed under his breath, face twisting ugly as the truth hit home. Guests shifted uneasy, the pie forgotten cold on plates. Agitating the betrayal hotter, I watched her crumble, years of my love thrown back like garbage. Suspense built thick. Would she deny it? My cousins demanded to know how long this had been going on, voices rising like a storm brewing. I explained everything calm and steady, voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade through fog. The master bedroom demand like I was trash to shove aside. The basement plan damp and moldy as their greed. Pain agitated sharp. My house, built with Martha's dreams and my sweat, now their grab for more. My voice stayed steady, but my chest felt lighter with every word, like shedding chains I'd carried too long. Cousins nodded angry, aunts glared at Emily. By the time I finished, the whole room was on my side, whispers turning to outright calls for justice. Emily's shoulders slumped low, knowing the family's respect was gone forever, her perfect image shattered like glass under a boot. Trevor tried one last desperate move, threatening to sue me, his voice barking loud. "We'll take you to court, old man." Agitating the hurt deeper, I almost laughed, him thinking law could fix his rot. Suspense coiled in my gut. Would he really try? Weeks later, Chloe showed up at my door with a folded paper clutched in her little hand, her eyes bright as buttons despite the dim hall light. "Grandpa, look what I drew," she said soft, unfolding it like a treasure map. The picture showed her, me, and Melissa holding hands under a sunny sky, stick figures smiling wide with crayon hearts floating above. "I want us together again," she whispered, hugging my leg tight. Pain hit my chest like a hammer blow. My revenge had rippled to this innocent kid, her world shaken by her mom's pride like a boat in rough waves. I knelt, hugging back, her warmth melting some ice in my heart. "Me too, sweetie," I said, voice cracking. "Perhaps this storm, harsh as it was with locked doors and cold words, might still water new growth between us. Suspense whispered, would Melissa see it? But could Melissa truly rise from her pride? Or was this just a child's dream fading like crayon on paper? Melissa invited me to Sunday dinner again. This time with no audience, no neighbors to impress, just her, Chloe, and me around a plain table with pasta and salad. The meal was simple, awkward at first, forks clinking like nervous taps on glass. Chloe chattered about school, filling the quiet, but Melissa sat stiff, eyes down. Then she said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I was cruel. I didn't think of what I was doing to you that night in the rain." Pain agitated like a fresh bruise pressed, her words stirring the betrayal. The cold soaked through my clothes like she'd forgotten the chill. I studied her face, searching for cracks in the mask, tears real or rehearsed. Suspense built in my chest. Was this truth, or another performance to win back what she'd lost? I nodded slow. Sorry to start, Melissa, but actions speak louder. She wiped her eyes, Chloe watching wide-eyed. She came to me with tears streaming down her face like rain on a window I couldn't open, her eyes puffy and red as if she'd cried the whole drive over. Pain agitated deep. My own daughter, who demanded my room like I was worthless trash, now begging on my doorstep. "Dad, please don't do this. We'll change. We'll treat you better," she pleaded, voice cracking like a child's first heartbreak. For a second, my heart wavered soft, memories flashing of her tiny hand in mine at Martha's funeral, me promising to always be there. But then I remembered her words sharp as knives. That was your job as a parent. Dismissing my life like old oil rags. Agitating the betrayal hotter, I stood firm. Suspense built in my chest. Would she push more or break? I told her my decision with finality, voice steady as the house beams I'd nailed myself. "No, Emily. It's done. Emily," I said calm, standing in the doorway like a guard at his post. "I already gave you everything I had. My sweat, my years, this roof. My job as a parent is done. Now it's your job to live with your choices, face the mess you've made." Pain agitated like a thorn twisting deeper, her turning my giving into greed, now storming back like she owned my mercy. Her tears turned into anger quick, face twisting red as a hot engine. "You selfish old man," she spat, but I didn't flinch, steady as the house that stood behind me. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the frame rattled like old bones. Trevor followed slow, silent for once, head down like a whipped dog avoiding eye contact. Suspense hung in the air. Would they come back begging more? The house fell quiet, but not empty. Echoes of Martha's laughter seemed to fill the rooms again, warm as sun after rain. When the 28th day came, they were gone like ghosts vanishing at dawn, their car packed to the brim with boxes that once filled my halls. The master bedroom was just as I left it. Martha's quilt still neatly folded at the foot of the bed, its colors faded but warm with memories of her laughter. I sat on the edge, breathing in the silence that wrapped around me like a soft blanket after a storm. Pain from Emily's words still agitated faint, like an echo of thunder far off. Her saying Trevor deserved my room more, treating me like old junk to shove aside. Revenge hadn't just given me justice. It had given me peace, deep and steady as the house foundation I'd laid myself. My daughter thought her husband deserved my room more than me. In the end, neither of them had a roof to call their own, scrambling for rentals while whispers followed like shadows. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply reminding people whose name is on the deed and watching them learn the hard way. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Joe's got more interesting stories for you.